The young chief official of Xuanwu City, Wang Lian, was 21 years old. After passing the imperial exam, he was appointed as the chief official of Xuanwu City. However, he did not abandon his academic pursuits and continued his studies, preparing for the imperial doctorate exam. In ancient China, this would not have been possible. One could only serve as a subordinate or assistant while studying, but in this world, it was different. Though Wang Lian was not from Xuanwu City, his family hailed from a distant province. He was widely known for his talent and reputation, even earning recognition in Xuanwu. Moreover, he had another identity. He was a distant relative of the Xuanwu Marquis's household. So how did Shen Lang come to know Wang Lian? Indeed, he knew him. 3 years ago, Wang Lian had taught Shen Lang to read, sticking with him for almost half a month. This memory also involved a person, the most beautiful woman in the region, Kim Mộc Lan, the daughter of the Xuanwu Marquis, was the dream lover of every young man. She was even rumored to be the future princess of Xuanwu City. At that time, Kim Mộc Lan had been hunting in the mountains near Shen Lang's home when she encountered a massive black bear. Her warhorse panicked and galloped out of control. At that moment, Shen Lang, a bookish simpleton with little intellect, was sitting on the ground reading a beginner's book with pride. Why was he sitting in the middle of a road? Because he was worried about a group of ants moving their nest. He wasn't concerned about himself, but feared that someone might step on them, so he sat there, making sure no one passed without avoiding the ants. Suddenly, Kim Mộc Lan's warhorse flew straight towards Shen Lang, with the massive black bear following, its claws raised to strike. Just when it seemed like Shen Lang would be trampled underfoot, Kim Mộc Lan quickly dismounted, grabbed the warhorse by the reins, and saved Shen Lang's life. Not only that, but the bear charged again, and Kim Mộc Lan, still holding the reins with one hand, drew her sword and swiftly decapitated the bear. Her martial skill was nothing short of impressive. At that moment, Shen Lang, knocked over by the hooves of the horse, was knocked unconscious. Though he wasn't seriously injured, he was frightened out of his wits. This event became a vivid memory for Shen Lang, though his recollection of the details was somewhat hazy. At the time, Kim Mộc Lan was wearing full armor, with her face obscured, so Shen Lang didn't recognize her as the Xuanwu Marquis's daughter. Later, when Shen Lang recovered, he realized that Kim Mộc Lan had sent someone from the Marquis's household to treat his injuries and even personally visited him, though Shen Lang was unconscious at the time. It was clear that the Xuanwu Marquis's family genuinely cared for the people. At that time, Wang Lian had just been elected, and he had not yet assumed his official duties. Because he was a distant relative of the Xuanwu Marquis, he visited their household. Although he rarely interacted with Kim Mộc Lan, he had heard about Shen Lang and his situation. Though Wang Lian was a new graduate, his status was still far removed from Kim Mộc Lan's. Nevertheless, he admired her deeply and learned that she had visited Shen Lang. Hoping to leave a good impression, he visited Shen Lang's house and offered to teach him how to read. He knew that if Kim Mộc Lan ever returned and saw Shen Lang studying, she would be deeply impressed. However, Shen Lang, with his clumsy nature, struggled with reading, and despite Wang Lian's persistence for half a month, Kim Mộc Lan did not return to Shen Lang's house. She was busy with her royal duties, and Wang Lian, disheartened, gave up on continuing the lessons. He realized teaching Shen Lang to read was just torture, as he could barely understand anything. But despite this, he and Shen Lang still maintained a distant, somewhat cordial relationship. Now, 3 years later, Wang Lian was wearing official attire and appeared before Shen Lang, whose past memories only had a few clear images of him. It took Wang Lian a moment to recognize Shen Lang. It was fate that brought them together, and that fate led Shen Lang to boldly challenge the two family and bring forward his new dyes, including the purple and rainbow-dyed silk. He knew that Wang Lian harbored a grudge against Zhang Tian, the son of a high-ranking official. During the time when Wang Lian taught him to read, he had overheard Wang Lian curse Song Tian multiple times. All of this was part of Shenlong's carefully laid-out plan. Now, standing before Wang Lian, Shenlong greeted him warmly, calling him brother. Wang Lian raised his eyebrow, not responding immediately. Instead, he said, "You should focus on reading instead of dabbling in dyes. Isn't this just indulgence?" In this world, there were two most esteemed skills, reading and martial arts, both of which held the highest status. In ancient China, scholars were usually regarded more highly than warriors, but in this world, both were seen as equally noble. Despite his admiration for Kim Mộc Lan, Wang Lian remained somewhat disdainful of Shenlong, considering him unworthy of the attention of someone as distinguished as Kim Mộc Lan. He turned to leave, sneering to himself. He had only been pressing the Tu family because of his past grievances with Song Tian. He never viewed Shenlong as a close acquaintance. Behind him, Shenlong smiled coldly. He was not surprised by Wang Lian's attitude. After all, he was just a rural nobody, not worthy of respect from such a noble official. After Wang Lian left, Lin Mo, the head of the Silk Pavilion, and Field 13 from the Black Garb Bang, spoke to Shenlong. They were both amazed by his victory over the Tu family, but they warned him of the dangers ahead. Wang Lian, being from a noble family, would not care to help Shenlong in his future troubles. However, Shenlong was not concerned. He knew that his victory with the rainbow silk had given him a crucial advantage. He now had the power to crush his enemies.
Tu Tian, this woman, really had a high opinion of herself. I can throw you away and trample on you, but you still want to obsess over me, like we are constantly in touch. When you, Shenlong, were useless, I kicked you out of my house. Now that you are useful, you enter my house and become a beast of burden. Shenlong said nothing and simply turned to leave. Tu Tian continued, Shenlong, even though you have dyeing skills, it doesn't change anything. You are still the same Shenlong. Don't think that because you can dye better than our craftsmen, you are impressive. We have dozens of dyers, and none of them have names. Her words were in fact quite true. The so-called dyeing craftsmen were just lowly servants. Though the technique was the best in this world, it wasn't something of great circulation. So, even though Shenlong had mastered the dyeing technique, in Tu Tian's eyes, he was still just a rural peasant. No matter how handsome he looked, he was still just a worthless person. You can't read, you can't practice martial arts, you don't know anything. Apart from entering my house to work with the dyeing technique, you wouldn't even be able to earn a living. Tu Tian added, and don't forget, you still owe Dian Huang 1,000 gold coins. Since Lin Mu didn't buy Shenlong's new dyeing formula and Tu family wanted to seize it, the 1,000 gold coins were, of course, still in the air. At that moment, Field 13 appeared like a ghost in front of Shenlong, saying, I still stand by my word. If you don't get the 1,000 gold coins tonight, I will kill your whole family. When the Black Garb Gang speaks, we follow through. Tu Tian spoke softly. You have no way out, Shenlong. In less than a day, where will you find the 1,000 gold coins? Your only option is to enter my house and hand over both dyeing formulas. If you do that, I can have Dian Huang forgive your debt. Field 13 added, the sun will set soon. We will go to your house to collect the money. You don't have much time, just under 7 hours. Tu Tian said, Shenlong, don't you tell me you're expecting help from Chief Official Wang Len? He's not here to help you. Besides, he's not here to help you. He's just trying to suppress the Tu family because of his grudge with Zhang Tian, your future rival. He doesn't care whether you live or die. Tu Tian's words were actually true. Field 13 continued, don't worry. we, the Black Garb Gang, will officially capture your whole family. Then, on the way, find some excuse to make you all vanish. Your family is an outsider, like a floating reed with no foundation. Tu Tiantian added, tonight, before it gets dark, if the Tu family doesn't see the purple and rainbow dyeing formulas, I can't guarantee what will happen. The Black Garb Gang is ruthless. Shenlong, your head may not be the sharpest, but be wise about this. Then, Tu Tiantian climbed into her carriage and left, while Field 13 turned and said, as soon as the sun sets, we will head to your house to collect the money. He slung his sword over his shoulder and slowly walked away. He would never ask to follow Shenlong again because Shenlong was extremely filial. As long as he stared at his parents and siblings, Shenlong couldn't go anywhere. During this time, Shenlong remained silent, calmly watching this interaction between the man and woman. After walking a few dozen meters, Tu Tiantian looked out from her carriage window and saw Shenlong standing alone on the central street. She couldn't help but laugh. Weakness is truly a sin. You look just like a dog. Shenlong, with your status, being able to enter my house as a servant is a great favor. Otherwise, someone like you, so useless, would just starve to death. These thoughts were only spoken when no one was around. Otherwise, her noble status would make such words sound harsh. Shenlong stood in the central street, his thoughts swirling. Earning money now seemed pointless. Even if he managed to make money, without power and protection, it would only bring trouble. This world was one of big fish eating small fish. And Tu family, Lin family, and Dian Huang were the monstrous forces he had to face. Dian Huang and the Tu family would definitely act tonight, using the lives of his parents and siblings to force Shenlong to hand over both dyeing formulas. Even if he handed them over, unless he spent his entire life as a servant in the Tu family, endlessly developing new dyes, his family would never be safe. This issue needed to be solved immediately. Originally, Shenlong had planned to wait for his soft approach to mature before taking action, but now the situation required him to act sooner. Shenlong kept rehearsing his plan in his mind.
By now, the sky was starting to brighten. It was almost time, and Shenlong needed to seize the opportunity to leave the city and head to the prestigious Xuanwu Marquis's estate, which was only a few hundred miles away. However, just at that moment, a loud sound of horse hooves suddenly shattered the quiet dawn. The ground trembled slightly, and Shenlong turned to see a cavalry unit approaching. This was an elite cavalry, with more than 100 riders. Each one was dressed in armor, riding strong war horses, holding large swords, and carrying big shields. Shenlong immediately recognized how much money would be required to equip such an elite cavalry. In both ancient China and medieval Western times, such elite cavalry was considered an absolute trump card force. Who could afford to field such an elite cavalry with such grandiose display? As the cavalry drew closer, Shenlong saw their banners and shields. This was the Xuanwu Marquis's cavalry. The Xuanwu Marquis's family, the Kim clan, was a prestigious noble family with a history of over 300 years. They had been defending Xuanwu City for generations, and their name was even synonymous with the city. The leader of this cavalry unit, dressed in silver armor, had a slender figure and wore a helmet with a face guard that only revealed her eyes, which gleamed like cold daggers. This was a woman, and her eyes were strikingly beautiful. Even without seeing her face, Shenlong immediately recognized who she was. She was none other than Kim Mộc, the legendary goddess in the area, the Xuanwu City princess, and the most beloved dream of countless young men. The Xuanwu Marquis's daughter was known for her exceptional skill. Shenlong was slightly startled. He had planned to head to the Marquis's estate, but hadn't expected to encounter her here. "Clear the way! Clear the way! Make way! Make way!" The two knights at the front of the cavalry unit shouted as they pushed past Shen Lang, forcing him to step aside. If Shen Lang had been struck by one of these knights, his bones would have shattered. He quickly stepped aside, but as he did, he deliberately slowed down, executing a small plan he had been preparing. Bang! One of the knights on horseback crashed into Shen Lang, sending him flying. It was a staged fall, perfectly timed and executed. "Madam, 3 years ago you knocked me down once. Why not knock me down again and take me home with you?" Shen Lang thought to himself after falling to the ground. Though he wasn't seriously injured, he exaggerated his pain with blood trickling from his mouth, making himself appear more wounded than he really was. He had to sell the scene. Kim Mulan's eyes tightened, and with a single swift motion, she leapt from her horse and landed gracefully a dozen meters away before quickly approaching Shen Lang. Isn't this young man handsome? And somehow, he feels familiar. This was her first impression. Although Shen Lang was not seriously hurt, he used his expertise to fake his condition perfectly. His appearance was pitiful, with blood on his lips, making him look utterly miserable, causing Kim Mulan's eyes to shimmer with sympathy. The entire city of Xuanwu belonged to her family. Though she knew that ordinary citizens getting in the way of the military could be trampled, Kim Mulan would not allow an innocent person to die in front of her. "General, I will take him to the nearest medical center for treatment," one of her servants suggested. "No need," Kim Mulan shook her head. "Common medical centers are unreliable. It's better to take him back to the Marquis's estate, where the doctors are more skilled. We can't let an innocent person die in front of us." Her voice was like crystal clear ice dropping into a lake, pure and clear. "Yes, ma'am," the servant replied, before gently lifting Shen Lang and placing him on horseback. "Return to the estate," Kim Mulan commanded, leading the cavalry back to the Xuanwu Marquis's estate. Shen Lang, injured yet still charming, was taken home by Kim Mulan, the princess of Xuanwu City. Today marks the moment when your destiny changes. Shen Lang silently encouraged himself. Will I be able to save my family? Will I be able to defeat the Tu family and Dian Huang? Will I be able to live a life of luxury, enjoying wealth and prosperity? It all depends on how I perform next.
Quiet, tense as if something is about to happen. The Xuanwu Marquis's estate was not located within the city, but instead stood independently on a vast estate with a castle about 20 miles away from Xuanwu City. Shen Lang had only seen this castle from afar, and the sheer size of it had shaken him. However, with his status, he had no right to step inside the castle. The Tu family, the richest in the region and a prominent power in Xuanwu City, could only visit this castle a few times a year. At most, they were received by the estate's steward. The Tu family's mansion was large and wealthy, but compared to the Marquis's estate, it was nothing. The Kim clan, the ruling family of the Xuanwu Marquis title, had true dominion over land and titles, unlike the fake aristocrats who only held honorary titles. Over the course of several hundred years, the Xuanwu Marquis's land had once spanned over 5,000 square kilometers. Later, due to political turmoil, both the Great Yan dynasty and the Yue kingdom had conducted a series of political reforms, and thus the Xuanwu Marquis's land shrank. Nevertheless, the Xuanwu Marquis still reigned as the supreme ruler of Xuanwu City. The Xuanwu Marquis's estate spanned thousands of acres, complete with its own farmlands, animal farms, orchards, and vineyards. The castle stood proudly atop a mountain 200 to 300 meters high, covering over 100,000 square meters, with walls higher and more imposing than those of Xuanwu City itself. The guards here were also far more formidable. Thus, if war ever broke out, Xuanwu City would be abandoned, but the Xuanwu Marquis's estate would remain impenetrable. Now, Shen Lang entered this estate for the first time, seeing the grandeur of one of the most prestigious structures in the Xuanwu region. Shocked, excited, full of surprise.
Kim Mulan and the marriage matter.
A daughter must marry, eventually, Kim Mulan said coldly. If anyone forces me to marry, they will be cutting off our Xuanwu Marcus's future. That person will be the enemy of our family. The air in the room grew heavy, and her parents were silent, deeply troubled by the sacrifices their daughter had made for the family. They couldn't even find the words to comfort her. After a long pause, the Xuanwu Marcus changed the subject, saying, "When you returned, did your cavalry injure someone on the streets of Xuanwu City?" "Yes," Kim Yulan replied. The Xuanwu Marcus asked, "Make sure the person receives proper treatment, and once they recover, send them some money. Right now, our family needs to maintain a good reputation." Just then, the voice of a servant from outside the door could be heard. "Master, Dr. An requests an audience." "Let him in," the Xuanwu Marcus ordered. A moment later, an elderly man entered, the chief physician of the Xuanwu Marcus's estate. Since Shenlong had been brought back to the estate by Kim Yulan, it was this doctor who was in charge of treating him. "Master," the old physician, Dr. An, bowed and said, "The young man who was injured has woken up, and there are no serious issues." Kim Yulan was surprised. "But wasn't the young man injured severely?" "He's fine," Dr. An confirmed. "That's good," the Xuanwu Marcus said, though he was slightly surprised. Why was such a minor issue being reported to him? The steward could handle such matters. Dr. An added, "The young man asked to see the Marcus." "See me?" The Xuanwu Marcus was taken aback. Even Xuanwu City officials did not dare to request an audience with him, let alone a common young man. Dr. An replied, "He says it is something very important related to the young lady's marriage." At this, the Xuanwu Marcus's face immediately became serious. He furrowed his brows, nodded, and said, "If he's truly not injured, let him come in." Shenlong had no serious injuries, but his muscles and joints were sore, and his complexion was a little pale from the overnight strain. He walked into the Xuanwu Marcus's study, bowed deeply, and said, "I am Shenlong, and I greet the Marcus." Although he was a citizen of Xuanwu City, and by some extent a subject of the Xuanwu Marcus, he had come from the modern world, so he had no intention of kneeling before anyone. The Xuanwu Marcus electioned slightly and studied Shenlong's handsome face with mild surprise. He had never expected such a handsome young man from a rural background. "Are you a scholar?" the Xuanwu Marcus asked. "I know the names of all the scholars and martial arts from Xuanwu City, but I've never heard of Shenlong." Shenlong said, "I am a student at the Huanshui Town School." This was somewhat embarrassing for Shenlong to admit. The school was a basic elementary school, equivalent to a modern primary school. To mention such a low-level education was a bit humiliating, especially since he had been expelled from there. The Xuanwu Marcus frowned and said, "Your skin is delicate, so your parents must have indulged you, focusing on your studies. But at your age, you still haven't entered the Xuanwu City School? Such wasted potential. How unfilial." At this point, the Xuanwu Marcus felt a bit of disdain for Shenlong. His own son was uneducated and unskilled, but still, he was better than Shenlong, who seemed completely useless. The Xuanwu Marcus then asked, "You were injured by my cavalry. Is your health really fine?" "I'm fine, just a bit of soreness in my joints," the Xuanwu Marcus said. "Now,
What is it that you want to talk to me about? You mentioned something important about my daughter's marriage. Tell me. Shenlong said, I've heard that the Chu clan is seeking your approval for a marriage proposal and that Chu Hongyu wishes to marry Kim Mulan. This was a secret that almost no one knew. Immediately, the Xuanwu Marcus's face changed dramatically. The Chu clan, the top aristocratic family in Yu Kingdom with ties to the emperor and important military leaders? If Kim Yulan were to marry outside, who would protect the Xuanwu Marcus? Who would command the Kim clan's private army? This was an attempt to sever the foundation of his family.
The goddess is me, Shenlong. After a long pause, the Xunwu Marquis finally calmed down and said, This matter of the Chu family seeking a marriage proposal is very secretive. Even I didn't know about it. How do you know? Who told you about this? Indeed, the eyes of those present turned to Shenlong. Given his humble status, how could he know such a secret? Shenlong replied, From Ta family's daughter's new fiancé, Chang Tan. Chang Tan? The new leader of the Xunwu city's military? Yes, him, Shenlong confirmed. Shenlong continued, I was once a son-in-law of the Tu family. When Tu Tian kicked me out, her new fiancé, Chang Tan, said that the wedding must be hastened because the Chu family was about to propose to your family. Chu Rongshe wants to marry Kim Mulan, and in his excitement, he let slip this secret. Afterwards, he ordered Tu Tian not to reveal anything. At this moment, a trusted servant of the Xunwu Marquis whispered into the Marquis's ear, clearly informing him about Shenlong's background. In Xunwu City, Shenlong was a notable figure. While no one dared to be a son-in-law of the Tu family, Shenlong had boldly become their son-in-law and gained fame in Xunwu City. Everyone knew there was a foolish, useless man who had entered the Tu family as a son-in-law. Shenlong's wealth had been fully exposed, including his nearly 10 years of schooling, yet he hadn't even completed elementary education. His intelligence was said to be quite low. Just 2 days ago, the Tu family had publicly announced that Shenlong had stolen their wealth and flirted with their maidservants, so they expelled him from the family. The servant spoke loudly, as if deliberately making sure Shenlong overheard. Hearing this, the Xunwu Marquis furrowed his brows. Whether Shenlong had stolen from the Tu family or flirted with their maidservants was hard to determine, but the Marquis was inclined not to believe it. However, the fact that Shenlong had studied for nearly 10 years and still couldn't finish elementary school made him look like a complete failure. Furthermore, from everyone's perspective, Shenlong had married into the Tu family solely for vanity. The Marquis had no patience for young people who were lazy and obsessed with superficial glory. Under normal circumstances, he would have chastised Shenlong, but now the information Shenlong provided was too important and directly related to the Marquis's future. The Marquis immediately realized that Shenlong was speaking the truth. The Chang family was a rising noble family in Yu Kingdom, with their power rooted in their ties to the Chu family. Chang Tan's father, Chang Zheng, had just been appointed as the magistrate of Jinjiang County, all thanks to the recommendation of Chu Rongshe, the governor of Tanan. So it was no surprise that Chang Tan knew the Chu family's secret. The Marquis knew Chang Tan well. Even the nobles of Xunwu City were shocked at how financially unstable the Chang family was. It was odd that the son of a magistrate would marry the daughter of a rich merchant, and even stranger that this daughter had once been married off to a son-in-law. The Marquis could understand, however. The Chang family had risen too quickly, with weak foundations. To grow further, they needed a significant amount of money, and this marriage was a strategic alliance with a rich family. Therefore, it made sense for the Chang family to marry into the Tu family. The Marquis gave the order, "Send several teams to patrol the roads. If anyone from the Chu family is found, report back immediately." "Understood." One of the trusted servants quickly left to investigate. Then the Marquis turned to Shenlong and said, "Kid, I don't have a good impression of you, but what you've said is of great importance. You've done a great service. I will definitely reward you handsomely. If there's anything you want, as long as it doesn't violate the laws of the land or the principles of morality, I'll grant it to you." Shenlong felt a surge of goodwill toward the Marquis. The fact that the Marquis was so generous, even without verification, was commendable. He understood that no matter how much money Shenlong wanted, the Marquis would give it to him as long as it was within reason. If Shenlong had any other troubles, the Marquis was willing to solve them for him. In other words, the threats from the Tu family, the Lam family, and Dianhong could be immediately nullified. As long as the Marquis sent a word, these three families would not dare touch Shenlong. However, Shenlong didn't just want this. This advantage was only the first step. The real goal was to stay at the Marquis' estate, then get closer to Kim Mulan, keep performing, and continuously create a sense of presence. Ultimately, he wanted to marry the goddess.
Shenlong swore to himself that with his talents and his handsome face, he would leave a deep impression on Kim Mulan within half a month. "I want to stay at the Marquis' estate and take up a position," Shenlong said as he bowed. He didn't mention the threat from the Tu family or Dian Huang because there was no need to. As long as he stayed at the Marquis' estate, the two families would naturally not dare to harm his family. Upon hearing this, the Marquis frowned. He had never had a good impression on Shenlong, a lazy and vain young man who had married into the Tu family for vanity. Nevertheless, if Shenlong stayed at the Marquis' estate, he would be disciplined and educated. The Marquis' sharp mind immediately understood the situation. The Marquis said, "If you want to stay at my estate and take a position, I will grant it. You've done a great service. I will not make you a servant, but," he toned grew stern, "but once you stay here, it won't be a life of leisure. I will discipline you strictly. Do you accept this?" Shenlong had no problem with that. He could endure hardship for a short time for the goddess. "Yes," Shenlong agreed immediately. The Marquis then patted Shenlong's shoulder and said, "Your body is too weak, and you're too old to start martial arts at this age. At your age, you should focus on studying. From now on, follow my son and study." Shenlong was slightly surprised. This sounded like a high-ranking tutor from the famous series Mastering the Arts of the Imperial Scholar. "All right. Since you're injured, rest for now. Tomorrow, you'll study with my son. I'll have someone inform your parents and send over some gold. If you have any trouble, I'll help you." "Understood, Marquis." The Marquis' wife, Kim Jong, then ordered, "Kim Jong, go to the estate and make new clothes for Shenlong." "Understood," the old servant replied. Shenlong felt a warm sense of appreciation. The Marquis and his wife were truly kind people. "Marquis, Madam, Miss, I shall take my leave." Shenlong bowed respectfully and began to leave. Just as he was about to reach the door, one of the Marquis' trusted servants hurriedly entered. "Master, there's bad news." The servant knelt and said, "We just received word from our spies in Jinjiang County. A prominent member of the Chu family has arrived in Jinjiang City, and their destination is the Shu Wu Marquis' estate." "What? What?" Shenlong thought to himself in shock. This was a critical moment. Shenlong had successfully completed the first step, staying at the Marquis' estate. In the coming days, he would begin the second step, continually performing and creating a presence. After that, the third step was to marry Kim Mulan. Yes, marrying into the Marquis' family. The reality was simple. Kim Mulan would never marry outside her family. But now, with the Chu family sending someone to Jinjiang City, the marriage proposal would likely happen that very night. Shenlong only had 2 or 3 hours left. If he failed, the goddess would belong to someone else, and his dreams of wealth and status would be gone. No, the goddess was meant for him. Shenlong's mind raced, quickly running through countless plans. At this moment, the main door of the Marquis' estate was shut, locking him outside. This was completely normal, as the Marquis needed to discuss confidential matters, and Shenlong, after all, was just an outsider and could not be involved. "Who from the Chu family is coming?" the Marquis asked. "The younger brother of General Chu Rong, General Chu Lan of the Southern Army." The servant replied, and then a pigeon messenger arrived from Jinjiang City with confidential news. The Marquis looked at the letter,
his face immediately turning pale. It was General Chu Lan. This was very serious. This meant the Chu family was aiming to secure their victory. Moreover, this marriage proposal was not a normal one. It was part of a political maneuver. The Chu family was secretly planning to take control of the Xuanwu Marquis' land and military power. The most critical point was this: the Marquis' heir was a useless fool, incapable of protecting the family's legacy. If Kim Mulan married Xu Hangshui, it would essentially destroy the Marquis family and seize its military authority. The Marquis' wife spoke in a trembling voice. "My husband, can we refuse them?" The Marquis shook his head. "We cannot. The Chu family is a massive force. If we openly refuse them, it would be a declaration of war. Moreover, there might even be the will of the king behind this marriage proposal." Kim Mulan said firmly, "I will never marry outside the family. I must stay here to support my brother and protect the Kim family's legacy. Whoever tries to take it from me will have to step over my dead body." The Marquis sighed deeply, his face filled with concern. He paced nervously in the room. Kim Mulan spoke again. "Father, I can disfigure myself if necessary." She then drew a dagger, prepared to ruin her own flawless beauty if her father gave the command. "No," the Marquis declared with absolute certainty. "I will protect our family's legacy, but first I must protect my daughter. And even if you disfigure yourself, the Chu family would still come for you, unless..." Kim Mulan said, "Unless I marry today, marry a man who will become a son-in-law, and by the time General Chu Lan arrives here, we will already be wed. This will make it impossible for him to proceed with his proposal." This was the only solution. Engagements were out of the question, as a son-in-law could not be officially engaged. General Chu Lan was less than 200 miles from the Xuanwu Marquis' estate and could arrive by nightfall. Initially, even though the Marquis had planned to choose a suitable son-in-law carefully, today, with the urgency of the situation, he had to make a decision quickly. They only had a few hours to send out the wedding invitations. Within 2 hours, they had to decide on the son-in-law. Looking at his beautiful yet resolute daughter, the Marquis sighed deeply and said, "Mulan, the Chu family is like the sun at noon. Chu Hangshui has a bright future ahead of him. He would make a perfect son-in-law for our family. I cannot sacrifice your happiness for the family's benefit, but please consider this carefully." Kim Mulan replied, "Father, my greatest happiness would be to serve the family, ensuring that the Kim family remains strong for the next 100 years. If my brother is incapable of protecting our legacy after your passing, I will never marry." The Marquis was deeply moved and pained. He picked up a brush and began writing down 5 names. These 5 young men were all highly talented and were the Marquis' top choices for son-in-law. The Marquis had started searching for a suitable husband for his daughter 3 years ago, but asking for a son-in-law had always been difficult for him. Even more so because Kim Mulan had always refused. But now, with time running out, a decision had to be made. The first name on the list was Wang Lian, an 18-year-old prodigy who just passed the imperial exams and now held a position in Xuanwu city government. The second was Mo Ya, a martial arts genius from Xuanwu City, who passed the martial exam at the age of 16 and was currently training for the higher-level martial exams. The other 3 names were all outstanding young men from within the Marquis' inner circle, well-trained in both the arts and martial skills, loyal to the family. These 5 young men all greatly admired Kim Mulan and dreamed of marrying her. Indeed, anyone within a few hundred miles of Xuanwu City considered Kim Mulan their ideal match. "Kim Jung, send word to bring these 5 young men here immediately. Let Mulan choose." The Marquis handed the list to his trusted servant. The Marquis felt guilty toward his daughter, so he had already narrowed the choices to 5 men. Ultimately, the decision was up to Kim Mulan. Understood, Kim Jung accepted the list, and after putting it in his chest, went out to organize a group of knights to fetch the men.
The Marquis turned to Kim Mulan and said, "Mulan, though time is tight, I will make sure you have the best choice. I will ensure you are happy for the rest of your life. These 5 young men are all exceptional. You should choose the one you feel is most suitable." At that moment, Shen Lang stepped forward and said, "Marquis, Miss Mulan, may I join the competition? I also wish to marry her." At these words, everyone froze, utterly shocked and caught off guard. The Marquis, a man of great composure, could hardly contain his anger. He almost exploded in fury. Not only the Marquis, but everyone else present cast hateful glances at Shen Lang, as though they wanted to tear him apart. "Just you?" one of them thought. "You want to marry the Marquis's daughter? You may have a handsome face, but you're more suited to being a duck, not someone fit to be her husband. What's your family background? You're just a poor peasant. Of course, one cannot choose their origins, but if you were truly outstanding, the Marquis might consider you. But look at you, 10 years of education, yet you couldn't even graduate from elementary school. That's like being 18 years old and still not having finished elementary school. You come from a poor family with no ability or skills, lazy and useless. Everyone in Xuanwu City knows your intelligence is below average. Compared to the 5 young men chosen by the Marquis, you are nothing." The 5 young men were either scholars of great learning or martial artists of exceptional skill. They were all far more worthy than Shen Lang. The Marquis's wife stepped forward and gently calmed her husband, saying, "Dear, don't get angry. We all know Shen Lang's intelligence is lacking, and he is just a child. Why should we argue with him?" The Marquis sighed deeply. Yes, Shen Lang was a fool, but why should he bother with a child like him? "Someone, take this stray dog back to his home. Give his parents 10 gold coins. Don't give him anything." The Marquis ordered, "Tomorrow, I'll send someone to ensure he continues his studies and receives proper education." "Yes." 2 soldiers moved forward and grabbed Shen Lang, dragging him out. "Shen Lang," called out, "Miss Mulan, believe me, I am far more suitable to be your husband than those 5. Don't I even have the right to compete?" Kim Mulan looked at Shen Lang, paused for a moment and said, "I remember now. 3 years ago, when I went hunting, I accidentally rode my horse into you. You were the second fool." Shen Lang couldn't believe his ears. The goddess spoke so plainly. It stung his heart. That's right. In the village, Shen Lang was known as the second fool. There was another bigger fool in the village, and he was Shen Lang's only friend at that time. When Kim Mulan accidentally injured Shen Lang, she picked him up and asked the villagers his name and where he was from. They answered, "That's the second fool." Upon hearing this, the Marquis could hardly contain his expression. Shen Lang said, "Miss Mulan, I truly want to marry you. I won't disappoint you." Kim Mulan looked at Shen Lang with a gaze full of warmth, even tenderness. 3 years ago, when she heard about Shen Lang, she knew he was of low intelligence, and she had felt sorry for him. She visited him several times, sending the best doctors to treat him. Thus, Kim Mulan looked at him and said, "All right, I'll add you to the list of candidates. You can now compete fairly." Others may have looked down on Shen Lang, but she did not. The Marquis was about to speak out to stop her, but Kim Mulan smiled and said, "Father, what are you worried about?" The Marquis sighed. Yes, why was he worried? Mulan was only being kind and compassionate, adding Shen Lang to the list, knowing he could never be chosen. "All right," he muttered. "Take Shen Lang to the 6th study room." Among the 6 young men, Shen Lang's competitiveness was almost non-existent. He barely had any. The favorite for the selection was undoubtedly Wang Lian. He was a young noble, a distant relative of the Xuanwu Marquis's family, a rising star in the imperial bureaucracy. He was sitting in a study room, nervous, restless, and excited. He knew exactly why he was here today. He had waited many years for this moment.
Although he was not originally from Xinjiang and was supposed to be studying for his doctoral exams, he had deliberately taken a post as a prison officer in Xuanwu City, a position he disliked. His purpose was simple. He wanted to be close to the center of power. He knew well that Kim Mok-lan could never marry outside her family, but he was willing to be a son-in-law. His family was powerful, and he had an excellent position in society. His father had worked hard to secure the family's success, and he had 2 older brothers, one in the martial exams and one in the literary exams. Kim Mok-lan had long fascinated him. She came from a century-old aristocratic family. Even becoming a son-in-law meant enjoying unimaginable wealth and power. The Marquis's son was useless, so the future of the Marquis's power would inevitably rest in Kim Mok-lan's hands. This made him eager to become her husband and share the Marquis's power. He knew that the Marquis's estate spanned over 1,000 square kilometers and had an army of 2,000, along with astronomical wealth. Thus, marrying Kim Mok-lan would make him the future lord of the estate. Kim Mok-lan entered the first study room, separated from Wang Lian by a screen. As soon as he sensed her presence, Wang Lian's breathing quickened, and he became nervous and excited. Soon, he would become Mok-lan's fiancé. Soon, they would share the same bed. His long-held wish was about to come true. Wang Lian, what can you offer me in the future? Kim Mok-lan asked. Wang Lian quickly suppressed his excitement and answered, "When we marry, I will sit for the doctoral exams. From then on, you will take care of the martial side, and I will take care of the literary side. Together, we will make the Xuanwu Marquis's estate even more prosperous and make the Kim family's legacy flourish for centuries." "Thank you, cousin." She left the room. Next, Kim Mok-lan visited the second study room, where Mo Ya, a martial artist, was waiting. Mo Ya was calm, with high martial skills. When Kim Mok-lan entered, his breathing didn't change, though his heartbeat quickened slightly. His longing for her was as intense as Wang Lian's. He was a martial scholar, born into an ordinary family, but his martial skills were unparalleled. He had reached a plateau in his training and needed many resources in ancient martial arts texts to improve. The Kim family's long-standing wealth and power could provide him with what he needed. "Mo Ya, if you were to become a son-in-law of the Marquis's estate, what could you offer me?" Kim Mok-lan asked, repeating the same question. Mo Ya replied, "I will pass the martial doctoral exams, become the world's greatest martial artist, lead the Marquis's army to conquer lands, and continuously create great achievements, making the Kim family's power and influence grow even further." "Thank you, Mo Ya," she said, and left the room. Next, Kim Mok-lan visited the 3rd, 4th, and 5th study rooms. She asked the same question each time, and the answers were all nearly identical. The men were loyal, willing to serve her and the family, and eager to risk everything for her. Finally, Kim Mok-lan entered the last study room. Behind the screen, Shen Lang felt Kim Mok-lan's presence, her scent filling the air, a sweet, powerful fragrance. He focused his mind, and through the screen, he could see her figure. His eyes lingered on her chest, and his heart raced. 36E? He thought to himself, feeling his pulse quicken.
Shen Long, if you were to become a son-in-law of the Marquis's estate, what could you offer me? Kim Mok-lan asked, repeating the question.
"What?"
Shen Long replied, completely caught off guard. Of course, you are the second fool, Kim Mok-lan thought to herself, but she asked softly, "What is the most valuable thing you can offer me?"
My virginity," Shen Long instinctively thought, though he knew he couldn't say that out loud, or he would certainly be beaten to death. But how should he answer this question? Of course, he could offer many things. For example, he was an excellent gynecologist, and if Mok-lan experienced pain during certain days of the month, he could help treat her. He also knew how to refine steel and iron, which could help make the Marquis's estate's weapons and armor stronger. Additionally, his eyes were incredibly sharp, and he could help with Mok-lan's training, identifying and relieving blockages in her body. He could already imagine how the others would answer. Wang Len would certainly say that he and Mulan could complement each other, that together they would make the Marquis' estate more prosperous. Mo Ya would probably talk about how he would become the greatest martial artist, leading the Marquis' army to victory, making the Kim family even more powerful. The other three would likely promise loyalty and self-sacrifice, as they had been raised by the Marquis and were completely loyal to the family. So, how should Shenlong answer? What did Kim Mulan truly want? When she saw he hadn't answered right away, she said, "It doesn't matter. Think carefully and answer slowly. No need to hurry." Her tone was still cold with the others, but with Shenlong, she instinctively softened. However, her tone was almost like she was speaking to a child with low intelligence, worried she might scare him. After thinking for a couple of minutes, Shenlong finally came up with an answer. "The most valuable thing I can offer you is freedom. As long as you don't steal any men, you can do whatever you want." At this, Kim Mulan was taken aback. Then she glared at Shenlong through the screen, wishing she could slap him. "What do you mean, steal men? Am I such a shameless woman?" But in her heart, she wasn't angry. What a fool. He's got no real plans. She then walked out of the room. Behind the screen, Shenlong wore a satisfied smile. If nothing unexpected happened, he had already won over the other 6 men. Why did Kim Mulan ask such a question? She was testing whether these 6 men had ambitions. The Marquis' heir was useless, so once the Marquis passed away, all power would rest with Kim Mulan. She needed to make sure her future husband wouldn't have any ambitions that could threaten her brother or the Kim family. So, when Shenlong answered, he showed that he had no ambitions of his own. This was exactly what Kim Mulan needed to hear. When Kim Mulan returned to the Marquis' main hall, the Marquis and his wife were eagerly awaiting her. When they saw her, they asked, "So soon?" Indeed, within 15 minutes, Kim Mulan had made her choice. "Daughter, have you chosen a good husband?" the Marquis asked. "If you have, I will immediately send out the invitations and will marry tonight." "I have made my choice," Kim Mulan said. The Marquis' wife stood up, eager to ask, "Who is it, Wang Len or Mo Ya?" Kim Mulan answered calmly, "I've chosen my husband, Shenlong."
Everyone is shocked. The outcome is decided. What? Upon hearing Kim Mulan's words, the Marquis' hair nearly stood on end. The Marquis' wife thought she had misheard, and the Marquis' loyal assistants and confidants were also completely stunned. "Mulan, have you lost your mind?" the Marquis said. "Why did you choose Shenlang when there are so many outstanding candidates like Wang Len and Mo Ya?" Everyone present was in disbelief as they looked at Kim Mulan. Out of the 6 men, Shenlang was the weakest, let alone comparing him to Wang Len and Mo Ya. He was inferior even to the 5 outstanding young men in the Marquis' household. He was a man of very low intelligence, having failed to graduate from a basic education after 10 years of study. He could neither shoulder any responsibilities nor take care of himself. "Mulan, why did you choose this one?" the Marquis asked. "Wang Len and Mo Ya are so outstanding. Why didn't you choose one of them?" Kim Mulan replied, "Father, these 2 are indeed exceptional. I asked them what they could offer me in the future. One said that he would complement me in both martial and literary skills, and together we would rule the Marquis' estate. The other said he would lead the Marquis' army to conquer lands and earn great merit." Hearing this, the Marquis fell silent. Everyone else thought the answer was fine and good. Kim Mulan continued, "If you were healthy, there would be no problem. But what if one day you're gone, and my brother inherits the title of Marquis? What if my husband develops ambitions and desires power? What would happen to my brother then?" As soon as she spoke, the Marquis became even more silent. The others present also suddenly understood. It couldn't be denied that Kim Mulan was very thoughtful and showed absolute loyalty to her family. Then she said, "Shenlang is good.
In fact, I only have one requirement from my future husband, and that is that he must be handsome. In this regard, Shen Lang is absolutely the best. The Marquis's wife felt as if a knife had pierced her heart. Her son was useless, and now she had to sacrifice her daughter's happiness. A good-for-nothing son-in-law was being brought into the family. What was the Kim family coming to? The Marquis said, "Mulan, can't you reconsider?" "No, it's decided. Time is of the essence. Father, immediately start sending out the wedding invitations. Prepare for the wedding right away and make the ceremony as grand as possible. It would be best if Chuk Lam arrives at the Marquis's estate just in time for the wedding." "Father, Mother, I've been on the front lines for several days, and I'm tired. I'll go rest now." She then bowed and left the room. The Marquis was upset, but he couldn't express his anger. He couldn't take it out on Shen Lang, so he could only vent his frustration on his useless son. "Where is that rebellious son?" the Marquis angrily shouted. "He's studying," the assistant replied. "Studying? He's been reading for over 10 years and still remains a good-for-nothing. Drag him out and make him kneel outside."
Marquis growled. "Useless brat! If he had shown any progress, I wouldn't have to make such a huge sacrifice for Mulan." "Yes, sir." The loyal servant hurriedly left. "No, I'll go myself," the Marquis said. "Where's my whip? Today I'm going to teach him a lesson." "Dear, you're not going to stop me, are you?" the Marquis's wife asked. "I'll go with you," she said. In another study, the spoiled son was reading diligently, quietly moved by the thought of his parents' pride in his efforts. "I'm the heir to the Marquis's estate, working hard to read, and when my parents see my efforts, they'll surely be pleased and encourage me," he thought. At that moment, the Marquis and his wife suddenly barged in. "Father, Mother, why are you here?" "I was just trying to read earlier, and now you're here to encourage me." "I'm just doing what a good heir should do, working hard and being disciplined," the son said. "Encourage you?" The Marquis suddenly pulled out his whip. A moment later, loud, pitiful screams could be heard from the Marquis's estate. "Father! Mother! Why are you hitting me? I didn't do anything wrong today. I was just reading." "Do I need a reason to beat you?" the Marquis said, continuing to lash out. The Marquis's wife, holding a ruler, aimed at the son's backside and thighs, saying, "That's right. Why should there be a reason to beat you, this useless thing?" "Ah! Ah! Ah!" the Marquis's son cried out in agony. "Sister, help me! Save me!" After hearing the result, Shen Lang let out a long sigh of relief. He had succeeded. From being a son-in-law, he had now moved towards becoming a different kind of son-in-law. From now on, delicious food, fine wine, and wealth awaited him. What in this world could be better than enjoying a soft life? Nothing. Originally, he was facing certain destruction. The Tu family, the Lin family, and Dian Huang were all collaborating to eliminate him. Now this threat had been completely neutralized. After becoming a son-in-law of the Xuanwu Marquis's estate, neither the Tu family, nor the Lin family, nor Dian Huang would dare to harm him or his family. They'd have to wait. Shen Lang would make them all understand what true revenge meant. Dian Huang, the Lin family, the Tu family, he wouldn't spare any of them. If they didn't end up destroyed, he wouldn't bear the name Shen. Meanwhile, Kim Jung, the Marquis's trusted servant, stood before Shen Lang. His face was dark, as if someone owed him a great debt. Kim Jung had been raised in the Xuanwu Marquis's household. He wasn't just a servant, but a member of the family, the most loyal of the Kim clan. Having watched Kim Mulan grow up, he couldn't stand the thought of this once proud woman being forced to marry someone like Shen Lang, a man of no worth. he still didn't dare to act out of line, so he remained cold and respectful despite his inner fury. "Shenlang, come with me. I'll show you to your guest room." He led Shenlang through the halls, walking for about 10 minutes before they arrived. Shenlang couldn't help but think, this marquise estate is huge. Even the richest people on earth don't have mansions like this. By the way, could you send someone to my house? Let my parents know not to worry. "I've already sent the word," Kim Jung replied coldly. Shenlang continued, "Tonight's wedding, can you bring my parents and brother here as well?" "I'll bring them myself," and he left immediately. He didn't want to even look at Shenlang's face. Shenlang added, "Please hurry. Someone is planning to harm my family." Kim Jung's eyes narrowed. Shenlang was now the Marquis' son-in-law, but in Zhuangwu City, someone was trying to harm Shenlang's family? That was bold. "I'll make sure your family is safe. Shenlang, you rest up and prepare for the wedding tonight." At the same time, inside the Black Cloak help, Dian Huang coldly said, "It's almost time. 13, take the men and bring Shenlang and his family here. If he hands over the dye formula, we'll kill them swiftly. If he doesn't, we'll kill them painfully."
Xuanwu City in uproar. Dian 13 trembles. At the order of the Marquis, dozens of teams were dispatched from the Marquis's estate, spreading the news of Kim Mulan's wedding far and wide. Wedding invitations were sent out, inviting the notable figures of Xuanwu City to attend the wedding that evening. Immediately, the entire city of Xuanwu was in turmoil. Countless young men pounded their chests and stopped in their tracks, feeling like there was nothing left to live for. This was the Marquis's precious daughter. She had a noble status, unmatched martial arts, stunning beauty, and a devilishly perfect figure. She was truly a goddess. No, she was the #1 goddess in the entire Jiangwang district. Countless people admired her in their hearts. Tu Tian, who came from a wealthy background, wanted to make her name famous everywhere and turn her business into a leading household in Jiangwang district. But Kim Mulan was already in the spotlight, and this title of leading household was an insult to her. She was the daughter of a century-old noble family. What were these so-called leading households? You were the leading household. Your entire family was. Tu Tian had many suitors, but Kim Mulan was even more beautiful and had a more seductive figure. However, no young man in Xuanwu dared to pursue her. It was too shameful. Everyone thought that someone with the status and beauty of Kim Mulan should at least marry into a noble family. Every man in Xuanwu City longed for her, but they could only fantasize in their hearts. No one expected that the princess of Xuanwu would have to marry anyone. This was shocking news. Such a goddess was beyond our reach, but she shouldn't have to marry. It would be best if she never married at all. That day, countless young men in Xuanwu City drank and pulled out their swords in a frenzy. "Who is it? Which man dares to marry our princess? I'll kill him! I'll kill him! Goddess, how could you do this? How could you marry? You've betrayed us!" Meanwhile, some influential figures in Xuanwu City caught wind of something strange. Who was Kim Mulan marrying? The wedding invitations didn't mention the name of the groom, and there had never been any rumors. Even stranger was that the wedding was happening tonight. It was all happening too quickly.
Noble weddings of this kind were usually very grand and intricate. First, a prominent figure would be sent to propose, and only after both parties agreed would the engagement take place. After the engagement, the two families would exchange gifts, hold grand feasts, and go hunting together. This would be done to let all the nobles know that the families were joining. Then they would wait for the emperor's blessing. Under normal circumstances, the emperor would send his blessings and gifts would be exchanged between the families. Once the emperor's blessing was received, astrologers and fortune tellers would pick a propitious date for the wedding, and only after that would the grand wedding be held. After all the preparation, a noble wedding would take at least a year or two to complete. But there was no such thing today. The wedding was announced today, and it was happening the same day. This was highly unusual.
Thus, the Lin family also wanted to thank Dian Huang. Shenlong had created the golden dye formula, bringing great benefits to the three powers who had joined forces to eliminate him, after which they would enjoy the spoils. From here on out, it would be about Dian Huang. After sending Dian 13 to eliminate Shenlong and his family, Dian Huang would have no more problems. Shenlong, a worthless figure, wasn't worth his time. To show his stance, Dian 13 led a group of 10 or so warriors and went to Shenlong's house. They surrounded his house. Dian 13 looked at the damaged house, sighed, and said, "Weakness is the original sin." Then he raised his hand and said, "By order of the city lord, Shenlong has been hiding in the fields to evade taxes. He must be arrested immediately. If anyone resists, kill them without mercy." Attack! At Dian 13's command, the black-clad warriors, dressed as militia, drew their swords and rushed toward Shenlong's house. Although they were from a criminal group, they were still meticulous in their work. They didn't directly attack, but instead used the government's authority to arrest Shenlong and his family. Until now, Shenlong couldn't avoid the situation unless he handed over the golden dye formula. Of course, even if Shenlong handed it over, his family would still be in danger. Dian 13 was genuinely a government official, and his subordinates were members of the Xuanmu militia. He had the legal documents for the arrest, so everything was legal. Bang! Bang! Shenlong's front door was weak and easily burst open. But when they entered, Dian 13 was surprised by what he saw. There was no panic, no desperate cries. Shenlong's father was lying in bed, coughing, holding a firewood axe in his hand. Shenlong's mother was standing by the bed with a cleaver, and Shenlong's younger brother suddenly stood up, holding a prepared sickle. The three of them didn't beg for mercy, but instead coldly stared at the black-clad warriors. Without Shenlong at home, their threats seemed meaningless. In fact, they weren't afraid at all. Dian 13 was momentarily taken aback and then chuckled and said, "Old man, what are you doing?" As he spoke, he drew a metal rod and approached Shenlong's father, still wearing a smile. Though Shenlong wasn't at home, Dian 13 wasn't worried. He knew that Shenlong would appear once his family was captured. Shenlong's father said, "We're all useless people. It doesn't matter." Dian 13 said, "So, you want to resist the arrest with a weapon? This is treason. I'm afraid I have no choice but to act." Then he swung the rod at Shenlong's father's arm. If the rod struck, it would shatter his arm. At the same time, his subordinates were attacking Shenlong's mother and younger brother. Just then,
Dian 13 suddenly felt a cold shiver run down his back. He quickly turned around and saw a figure standing outside Shenlong's house. It was an ordinary middle-aged man who wasn't holding a weapon, but the aura around him made Dian 13's back stand on end. This was a master. By order of the city lord, Shenlong is being arrested for hiding in the fields to evade taxes. Anyone unrelated, please leave immediately, Dian 13 commanded. Standing outside the door was Kim Jong, a servant of the Marcus's estate. He had arrived earlier, but was waiting until Dian 13 broke through the door before making his appearance. This was his subtle way of handling things. After hearing Dian 13's words, Kim Jong calmly replied, "Oh, the city lord's office shouldn't be disturbed, but my master has requested that Shenlong and his family attend the wedding. If I don't take them, I can't report back to my master. Can you kindly make an exception?" Upon hearing this, Dian 13 immediately felt uneasy. The other man was calm and polite, and this made him nervous. He had seen many people and killed many as well. He knew that the more powerful a person was, the more composed they were. On the contrary, people without power often spoke loudly and threatened others. Dian 13 asked, "May I ask who your esteemed master is?" If the person had a high status, then a more detailed discussion could be held. But if he had no status, Dian 13 would have no problem dealing with him harshly since he was working under the government's authority. "Kim Jong," the middle-aged man replied. Hearing this, Dian 13's expression changed. He had heard that name before. Of course, Kim Jong wasn't considered a high-ranking figure. Within the Marcus's estate, he wasn't particularly important. But for Dian Huang, this was someone who absolutely should not be provoked, as he was a trusted servant of the Marcus. Even more terrifying was his connection to the Marcus. Dian 13 could feel his breathing growing heavy, and cold sweat began to drip down his back. His hair stood on end. He barely managed to keep his composure and asked, "Is your master requesting Shenlong and his family to attend the wedding?" "Correct," Kim Jong answered indifferently. Dian 13 immediately remembered Shenlong's handsome face. After yesterday morning, Shenlong had disappeared. He didn't expect the situation to involve the Marcus's family. This was a huge problem. Feeling the danger approaching, he thought, "I hope the relationship isn't too close. Otherwise, I'll be in a lot of trouble."